We're
Yes,
well,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Thanks, Lee.
Yeah.
How are you?
Not too bad, yeah. Rather had a rather interesting day seeing as Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Paul decided late last night to join Heart of Wessex as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
good.
Which as you can imagine, rather changed my pitch, which I had lovely and ready, all ready to go. But hey ho, these things are sent to try us.
Yeah. Interesting.
That is interesting. It's very interesting indeed because I thought they would go in the other direction and go to Hampshire and that way. But
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Bournemouth's
there's a
my
possibility
hometown.
Swindon might join as well.
there is. Although I believe they're leaning towards Thames Valley and Berkshire. But then
Yeah.
again, we were wrong on which way Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Paul were going to leap, so we'll probably be wrong on Swindon as well. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Okay, I think what are we now? We're 7:34. So what I'll do,
6:34
Yeah,
here.
6:34 here.
yeah, 7:34 for us. Yeah, good point. What I'll do, welcome all of you to the first meeting of the Heart of Wessex bus franchising team. What I'll do is, if I can go around you and just get sort of brief name and organisation introductions, if that's okay. So I'll start by how I can see you on the screen. So if I go with Rosa Kell.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Rosa Kell, Wells Bus User Group, Somerset Bus Partnership, basically covering everything north of Taunton, Bridgewater High Bridge, the Old Mendip region, and reaching out into North Somerset and Baines and Weckout.
Thank you, Rosa. Peter Travis.
Hello, I'm one of the co-chairs of Somerset Bus Partnership. I'm one of the leaders of Froome Bus User Group, and I live just this side of the Wiltshire-Somerset border in a village called Road.
Thank you, Peter. Kevin Sanders.
Yeah, so I'm Kevin Sanders, Somerset Bus Partnership. I've been part of Somerset Bus Partnership for a few months. It's been quite interesting.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. So I might not have got your sound there. Thank you, Kevin. Barry Childs.
I'm Barry Childs. I live in Norton Fitzwarren, just west of Taunton, member of the Somerset Bus Partnership. I never worked professionally in the industry, but I followed the fortunes of the bus industry back to the start of National Bus Company in the early 70s. Come from Bournemouth, so I was brought up on Bournemouth Corporation Transport, Hanson Dorset, Royal Blue, and got a fair operating knowledge, but I've never actually worked professionally in the industry.
Thank you, Barry. Jane Russ.
Hi, I'm Jane Russ. I'm from Westbury Town Council. I also happen currently to be the mayor. I started looking at the possibility of trying to sort out a regular, frequent, dependable bus service in Westbury, and that's how I came to find this group. We have one of the best connected stations in the southwest of England, in that you can get almost anywhere from Westbury, but there is no bus from the station to the town centre. Go figure. And we are very interested to see where all this goes. And I know that my colleagues on town council are very interested. We're hugely committed. I need to say this right up front. We are hugely committed at the moment, in that we have just taken devolution of services from Wiltshire. So in terms of time and finance available, we're thin. But I am absolutely determined to continue supporting this group, because I want to see where it's going and I want to see if we can buy into it too. I'm sorry, but I am going to have to go in about an hour. I'm flexible, but just so you know, if I suddenly disappear, that's why. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Where are we now? It's Jane. Mick Leary.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It's Mick Leary, and I'm the councillor on Bridgewater Town Council and also part of the Transport Forum. The Bridgewater Town Council has adopted all the proposals within the Somerset Bus Partnership, who we work very closely with, obviously. And that is on franchising as well, with Lee and the help of Lee and the work that he's been doing along with Emery as well. So that's really good. And I'm just sort of here because we're actually, I want to update my council as well about the way that we're going, as we've adopted the franchising, but I really do need to be in a position of how we move forward with this new development.
Hey, thank you, Mick. I've got on here Susan.
Yeah.
If you'd like to go next.
I I came on board with Somerset Bus Partnership about a year ago. I live in Evercreech, and the bus service was under threat at the time. But yeah, I've become quite involved in a lot of things more recently, and I'm going to the next LCN meeting, and I'm helping Rosa with Shepton Mallet, and yeah, sort of Wincanton, Castle, well, not Castle, yeah, Castle Kerry a little bit, Bruton, yeah, quite busy.
You've got an adorable dog, I have to say.
Oh, there's one behind me as well.
There's one behind you as well. Okay, can't be bad, can it?
No.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Tim Trimble, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Trimble. I'm a councillor for Bradford-on-Avon North. I'm on the Town Council and Wiltshire Council, and I'm currently chair of the Town Sustainable Travel Committee. If anyone knows Bradford-on-Avon, the traffic is a huge problem here, and I really got interested in the buses to try and get people out of their cars and either walking or cycling or using the bus. So I'm keen to do anything really to improve the bus services.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Catherine Doody.
You're on mute, Catherine.
You might be on mute there, Catherine.
Okay, bear with me.
No problem. I've been having that feeling all day myself.
Yeah, well, it happens. I'm just trying to find the mute now, and I can't. Oh,
I can hear you, Catherine. It's okay.
Oh, you can. I've done something right then. Okay, yeah. So, Catherine Doody, Malmesbury Town Council. Okay, obviously been sort of interested in buses. We're a very small town, as you know, but our buses are very important to us. Okay, especially to getting out to the villages and that sort of thing. Malmesbury doesn't do too badly. It's the villages, really. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Now I've got Emery Taylor, but I have been warned beforehand that he might not be able to speak, so I'll give him about 10 seconds to see if he can join us, but if not.
Oh.
Okay. Well, Emery has been really instrumental in helping me put this franchising proposal together so far. Very much my right-hand man on this. A lot of work on the timetabling and fresh ideas as well. He's joining us from Tenerife, I believe. Hence the difficulties with the signal. But I am glad he's here and listening anyway. which I think is going to be what he'll be doing this evening. So if I can move on to Gary Ford.
Hi everyone, I'm Gary Ford. I'm the Environmental Officer for Corsham Town Council in North Wiltshire, and also a member of the Corsham Bus Action Group, which is looking to put as many people as possible onto our local bus services and improve them for the local community as well.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Is there anybody that I've missed?
I think my microphone's working now.
Oh, great. Off you go then, Emery. I can hear you.
Hi.
Right.
Emery, can you hear me? Oh, we did have him. Okay, right. We'll continue. We'll continue anyway. Right. So, anyone who knows me knows that I'm not really one for slide presentations or particularly long presentations, if I'm being perfectly honest. So what I'll do is I'll go through the rationale for the franchising proposal that we've been putting together, and an overview of where we are so far with it. And then after that, we'll go around, get your thoughts, any questions you might have, and just basically go from there. What I should say beforehand is that I have had a meeting ahead of this with a few people who couldn't turn up this evening. They included Tony Rees from Yeovil, Graham Ellis from Melksham, Jane Robertson from Corsham, and Philip Campagna from Froome. And I basically gave them the same overview as I'm going to give you tonight, obviously minus the Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole section, because I'm not a clairvoyant and I didn't know they were going to vote to join Heart of Wessex last night ahead of it. You'll have to bear with me on that. Okay, so we now have a clear direction of travel that the new government are taking on devolution, with an equally clear strategy of instructing local authorities to team up with each other to form new, larger mayoral combined authorities. In response to this, we have seen the birth of the Heart of Wessex devolution proposals, partnering Wiltshire with Somerset, Dorset, and now Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole councils. And both the leaders of Wiltshire and Somerset councils openly saying that while they personally wouldn't have chosen this style or form of local government, they nonetheless urge everybody to get on board and realise the many opportunities that a new mayoral combined Heart of Wessex authority can and will bring. In terms of bus franchising, the key aspect to note from this is the mayoral nature of the devolved combined authorities that the new government is seeking to create right across the country. Even before the new government came to power, I knew from my own long-established contacts with the northern mayoral authorities that they anticipated this, and that is why you are seeing Liverpool City region and West Yorkshire racing to become the next such authorities to follow Greater Manchester in rolling out bus franchising in their areas, with South Yorkshire and Warrington also positioning themselves to do so, with the ultimate aim of creating a combined franchised B-network Yellow Arc bus network right across that strategic North of England corridor. Also, just the other day, we saw the West Midlands formally announcing their intention to go for franchising. We all knew that the incoming government would seek to find a way to direct all local authorities towards introducing bus franchising, and their strategy of instructing local authorities to team up with each other to form new, larger mayoral combined authorities is clearly partly aimed with this in mind. And we saw the other night, Wiltshire Council leader Richard Kluwer clearly having that in the back of his mind when he backed bus franchising, and also in the context of the Wiltshire, Somerset and Dorset together forming around 1.5 million in terms of population, and that being sort of the ideal really for franchising for sort of rural areas like this. The recent announcement of substantial BSIP funding, the introduction of the bus services bill, updated guidance on bus franchising, and the exciting opportunities arising from the Heart of Wessex devolution proposals present an unprecedented chance to create lasting improvements to public transport in our area. This partnership is why we are now focusing on a franchising proposal for Wiltshire, Somerset, Dorset, and now Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole under the Heart of Wessex banner. So why bus franchising and why the Heart of Wessex? One, a strategic focus. The Heart of Wessex devolution proposals create an ideal framework for franchising, allowing Wiltshire, Somerset, Dorset, Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole to work collaboratively within a single unified strategy for public transport. This approach will deliver a coherent and integrated transport network that meets the needs of passengers across all three counties and, of course, BCP as well. Enhanced cross-border connectivity. While focusing on the Heart of Wessex area, the proposal will still prioritise seamless cross-border services with Wecker, North Somerset and other neighbouring areas. This will ensure connectivity for passengers without duplicating efforts or creating operational inconsistencies. As well as that, within the Heart of Wessex zone, you often get situations where you have cross-border services between Somerset and Wiltshire, Somerset and Dorset, those kind of internal, what will be the internal borders of the Heart of Wessex area. And obviously having one franchising area will give us an opportunity to sort those long-standing issues out. Franchising as a tool for transformation. Enhanced partnerships can only achieve so much due to their reliance on voluntary cooperation from private operators. Franchising provides the control necessary to deliver the structural and service level changes needed to create a reliable, affordable and accessible public transport network. And learning from success. With lessons from Greater Manchester and other areas, franchising offers Wiltshire, Somerset and Dorset the opportunity to create a system that truly delivers on the ambitious goals of our BSIP and achieves transformative change. So in terms of the governance procedure that we're looking at with the franchising proposal, as many of you will know, I work within the public transport system in Brittany in France, where we have a franchise bus network, or basically the French equivalent. Public transport services in Brittany are specified by a joint partnership formed of regional and municipal authorities, passengers and stakeholder groups, and operators in the form of the line committees. There are 7 different line committees that meet regularly, each representing a particular area. The regional and municipal authorities have a statutory obligation to attend, and we require passenger and stakeholder groups to sign a service level agreement as a condition of membership, which includes an obligation for them to attend. The operators have a clause in their contracts that obligates them to attend, but bear in mind, though, that France has never had a deregulated bus system that hands significant powers to the operators. Instead, their only function is to provide the drivers and vehicles to operate the services, and their membership of the line committees is so that they can provide operational knowledge and expertise as to how to operate the specified services in the most efficient and reliable manner possible. Also, the line committees make information like passenger numbers, reliability figures, and that kind of information fully available to the public. Again, because France has never had a deregulated bus system, this also means that the culture of commercial confidentiality that is proving so hard to overcome in the UK is nowhere near as much of a factor over here. Last but not least, any member of the public can attend a line committee meeting and ask questions, but we do require them to be a resident of the particular line committee area that the meeting is being held in. We have sought to replicate this in our franchising proposal through the proposed local area panels, and again, it'll be around 7 different local area panels across the Heart of Wessex area. Now, the big question that I'm sure you all have, though, is, does the line committee system actually deliver? Since the Brittany region took over responsibility for non-municipal bus routes from the departments, which are the equivalent of UK counties, in 2018, and integrated them with the regional rail system and ferry services that it already had responsibility for, and introduced the line committee system as part of that, it has opened a new metro line in Wren and will in 2025 open a new tram line in Brest. It is either already refurbished and renovated or is in the process of doing so, integrated rail and bus stations in 14 towns. It has introduced electric buses in 5 towns. It has or soon will renovate 5 local railway lines that in previous decades, or if they were in other parts of France, be under serious threat of closure. It will also introduce comprehensive bus and rail service improvement packages in all 7 line committee areas by 2028 and has already rolled out several of these. It has introduced a permanent €2.50 bus fare cap on all routes that operate within one department, with many municipal bus routes having significantly lower flat fares than that. In 5 municipalities, the municipal bus networks are completely fare free. So in terms of the secret sauce, if you like, as to how we managed to achieve that, what you tend to find with the deregulated bus system in the UK, and particularly over the previous few years, is that it's almost inherently pitting passenger and stakeholder groups, bus operators, and local transport authorities against each other because of their differing agendas. So, for example, the bus operators are looking to keep their businesses viable and profitable, which, as we've seen, often means that they've cut routes. Passenger and stakeholder groups obviously want that trend to reverse and for the bus network to look far more as to what their aspirations for what a proper bus network should look like. And often cash-strapped local transport authorities that aren't able to step in with the financing required to plug the gap. So basically, that engenders a culture of managed decline. And what we want to do with this franchising proposal is we very much see all of those groupings as part of one team working together. And what I'm going to do next is to go on to the financial parts of the business case and run through them with you. And you'll see that obviously if you've got one team working together, what you need to do is to look after the interests of all of the constituent groups of that team. So if I move on to the franchising business case, just moving onto my screen now. There we go. Basically, it's in 2 parts. So what you've got is the first part is a 10-year franchising investment plan, and the second part is your annual day-to-day looking at creating and operating the improved bus services that we'd like to see. So what I'll do first is I'll run through the elements of the proposed 10-year franchising investment plan. Now, bear in mind that these figures will seem high, but obviously bear in mind that it's over 10 years. So it's X amount over 10 years. So I'll go through. So business case development, strategic, economic, financial, commercial, and management case, 1.5 million. Consultation process, public engagement, stakeholder workshops, and operator negotiations, 500,000. Legal and procurement costs, franchising orders, competitive tendering process, 750,000. Governance setup, transport committee, passenger advisory panels, local area panel setup, 250,000. Network redesign, consultant fees, regional demand assessments, timetable integration, 2 million. Integration with rail services, scheduling coordination, multimodal ticketing implementation, 500,000. Electric bus purchase, 700 buses over 10 years at 350,000 each would be 245 million. Charging infrastructure at depots and terminus, 35 charging hubs at 2 million per hub. 70 million. Hydrogen bus pilot fleet, 50 buses at 450,000 each, 22.5 million. Training for drivers and engineers on zero emission technologies, 5 million. Real-time passenger information systems, i.e. digital displays at 1,500 key stops and mobile apps, 10 million. Fare integration systems, smart cards, contactless payment systems, app development, 5 million. Accessibility upgrades, audible announcements, step-free access for 1,200 stops, 15 million. A system of rural accessibility zones. So DRT vehicles, electric minibuses, 200 units at 150,000 each. That's a cost of 30 million. Operational costs, software staffing and maintenance, 10 million per year over 5 years, equaling 50 million. Simplified fare structure, so fare capping and smart card rollout, hardware, back-end system and testing, 7 million. Marketing and public awareness campaign, 2 million. Tendering process costs, competitive bidding management and performance monitoring systems, 1 million. And transition support for operators, so the transition from deregulated to franchise system, 10 million. Performance monitoring systems, data analytics tools, passenger satisfaction surveys, 2 million. And annual reporting and evaluation costs, 1 million per year over 5 years, which would equal 5 million. So your total estimated scheme cost is 485 million over 10 years. So in terms of the local authority, what they'd be up for that, you would be looking at, out of the supported bus budgets, bear in mind that the figures we've got were before Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole joined, so I need to update them, but they'll be similar for them. So you're looking at 1 million each from each LTA out of their supported bus budget, but bear in mind that that's roughly what they'll spend on the kind of rural bus services that will be converted to DRT, demand responsive transport, under this plan. So, and that cost is included in the franchising investment plan. So essentially they're investing in the plan rather than investing extra money. See what I'm saying? You'd need around 670,000 per authority from their basic capital allocations. But bear in mind you're looking at 2 to 3 million of capital allocations per year from the new government's funding formula, so that's affordable. And also from the revenue that franchise bus services bring in, you'd be looking at around 750,000 per year. In terms of where the rest of it comes from, you've got a mix. The proposal foresees a mix of where it will come from sources such as devolution funding, zebra funding, rural mobility fund, levelling up fund, private operators through their franchise contracts, Innovate UK and hydrogen grants. And if you look at the, we've actually sent through the business plan as one of the attachments that you got in the invite to this meeting. So you can look through it and you'll see exactly which pot would fund which part of the investment plan. And what we're going to do is, the plan's in outline at the moment. We're going to develop it in detail. So you also get examples of where other mayoral authorities have had this level of funding already. So you'll see how becoming a mayoral combined authority will put you in line for these kind of funding settlements. So what I'll do now is I'll go on to the second part of the business case, which is basically in terms of creating the bus network that we want to see. So what we're looking at is over the three counties and Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Poole. With the three counties, Somerset, Dorset, and Wiltshire, we're looking at dividing the county into three different operating areas. So for Somerset, it would be Greater Taunton, Greater Yeovil, and Northern Somerset. For Wiltshire, it would be the Trans-Wilts Corridor, Salisbury and Southern Wiltshire, and Northern and Eastern Wiltshire. For Dorset, it would be the core route network, Jurassic Coast, and the Dorchester and Weymouth hinterland. And there would also be one unified operating area for Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Poole. So in terms of what we're going to do for each of those, we've already completed the process with Greater Yeovil and Northern Somerset. But what we'll do is we'll go around representatives like yourself, other passenger and stakeholder representatives, and ask you exactly what level of service you want to see on the bus routes in your area. And we will create franchise bus routes based on what you tell us you want. And in terms of how we've done that so far with Greater Yeovil and Northern Somerset. So basically, we have a passenger base figure, which is based on either passenger. We have some passenger figures already that have been supplied by local authorities. Where they're unavailable, we use a business case standard procedure to estimate it. But what we'll do in the business case is we'll explain exactly how we've arrived at that, and we'll make it route specific as well. So if there's different sort of aspects, things that are unique to the area that the route covers, we'll explain that in detail and how that affects our passenger estimates. So in order to arrive at the revenue from that, we've decided to go for a fare structure, which would be £1.50 for all journeys within a town or city area, £2 for all journeys under 15, all interurban journeys under 15 miles, and £3 for all journeys of 15 miles or over. So that's how we'd arrive at the estimated revenue figure. In terms of the costs, we're lucky enough to have our contacts in Essex County Council, who've given us full unit costs for pretty much everything to do with bus services, that are right up to date, and also because we'll be able to, because from next year the bus funding from central government becomes multi-year settlements, we'll be able to offer franchise contracts of the kind of length that has seen greater competitiveness in places like Greater Manchester, sort of 5 to 8 year contracts. And in Greater Manchester, that's reduced the cost of those contracts compared to the tendered bus service contracts that you're used to, by around 25%, which makes a huge difference in terms of the viability of services and how much they cost. And we can expect to see that in this franchising area as well. Because we've had discussions with bus operators where they've said if you offer that kind of contract, it'll be competed for more, and also there's more chance of them actually investing their own resources as well, which you've also seen in Greater Manchester. Go Ahead, for example, investing 40 million in electric buses off their own resources. So what will then happen is each route will be given either a surplus or a deficit figure, depending on how that calculation works out. And then you'll have an overall surplus and deficit figure for each operating area. And what we'll do is we'll make those fit within the supported bus budgets combined of Somerset, Wiltshire, Dorset, and Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Poole, and also the BSIP allocations that they're given. But what we'll also do though is, because there's a key factor here is the difference between how a Labour government would allocate bus funding and how a Conservative government would allocate it. So while you've got a Labour government in charge, what they'll do is they'll allocate it through a formula, which is basically, it's a mixture of mileage, deprivation statistics, and population figures as well. And what that means is that you'll get the same kind of annual settlement in terms of basic capital funding and basic revenue funding. So basic capital funding is for infrastructure, and basic revenue funding is more for supporting the bus services and bringing new bus services online. So you can basically count on that being at the same level each year going forward while there's a Labour government in charge. However, at some point there'll be a Conservative government will, I'm sure, win an election at some point in the future, and we need to. And what they do is that they allocate bus funding and on the basis of local authorities competing for it. So what we need to do is we need to make the franchising system resilient for that, just in case we end up in a situation where we bid for government funding and we're not successful. And what we'll do with that is, once the Heart of Wessex development strategies are aligned, we'll introduce developer bus funding policy, which is based on the one that Essex County Council have in place already as part of their bus service improvement plan, where each development automatically triggers developer bus funding levy for bus services in the area. And also we're going to we've also got a proposal for a new homes bus accelerator funding proposal. And what that does is, as part of their planning reforms, the new Labour government have got what's known as a new homes accelerator fund. And what the new homes bus accelerator proposal does is where the developer bus funding would lever in community infrastructure levy developer bus funding, the new homes bus accelerator proposal would automatically lever in section 106 contributions for larger developments. So you've got a developer bus funding policy for community infrastructure levy contributions, and you've got one for section 106 contributions as well. And the idea behind that is twofold, really. We know from the planning reforms that the new Labour government are putting in place that there'll be a significant increase in the numbers of houses being built, new developments going forward. And it makes sense for us to try and lever as much developer bus funding out of that as possible. And the second is, obviously, as I've explained, we want to make sure that we can always fund any new service and improved bus service proposals that we put in place, and that we're not always reliant on government bus funding that might not always be there for us. So that's that bit. So in terms of the other thing as well is, obviously, when you put a new bus service in place, there's always a slight risk as to how many people will actually use it. So what we do over in Brittany, and what we're proposing to do here as well, is to put in place multi-level bus franchising contracts. So what that would do is that if passenger numbers exceed a certain amount, it's a trigger for an enhanced service level. But we also have the option of reducing it if they fall below forecasts. But what we'll do is, like we do in Brittany, we've not had to reduce any bus services so far, and that's because we do it as a package. So basically, when we put a new bus service in place, we put promotion strategy in place. We put measures in to try and ensure its reliability, that it's got enough bus resources, that we're not having to cancel journeys, as you often see, various places across the area, just to make sure that when we put the new service in place, it can run reliably, everybody knows about it, and it's aligned with what people want to see. And the last part of the business case on the financial side is to actually put a franchising team in place. So what local authorities get, and what's been confirmed in the latest BSIP funding allocations through the new government's formula, is that Somerset, Dorset, Wiltshire, and Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Poole have each been allocated a figure of 94,000 for capacity and capability allocation. And basically what that's for is for staffing costs, for BSIP projects, that kind of thing. And what we're proposing is to put that all together into one pot. And bear in mind that I was working on this today, because I only found out today that Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Poole were joining us. That would give a total of a 376,000 per annum budget. And with that, we're proposing to hire a director of franchising, which would be at the top of the staffing structure, 4 franchise managers, 1 for each local authority area, so 1 for Wiltshire, Dorset, Somerset, and Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Poole. And also to bring in onto that team a DRT manager. And we believe that logic dictates that should be Paul Sanders, who's already in place in Wiltshire, and is one of the country's leading DRT experts. So yeah, he would be on the team as well. So that should give us the expertise we need to make sure that we can run a franchise system properly and effectively. So to conclude, looking at timelines, it looks like we wouldn't have a mayor in place. It could be a year up to 18 months. But certainly from what I've heard, central government will want local authorities and the new devolved authorities to start working on franchising proposals pretty much straight away. So what I'm proposing to do is with the business case, with the 10-year franchising investment plan, I believe that I can, and with the help of the people who I work with on it, get that done by the end of January. The new services package, the second part of it, obviously won't be done that quickly, because we've only got 2 areas, Greater Yeovil and Northern Somerset, done, and we need to go around all the other parts of Heart of Wessex and do what we've done there, asking passenger and stakeholder representatives, what kind of franchise, what service levels, what franchise bus services they want to see. And we believe that process will take up to around spring 2025. That's when we'd like to complete that by. So in terms of what we'd like to ask you to do, everything we've sent through so far and everything we'll send from this point, we're happy to be in the public domain. So please do take any opportunity you can to advocate for the principle of franchising in the Heart of Wessex area. And obviously, when we come round to your area and contact you, please do take part in the process of telling us what you want to see from your bus services, not just from the bus service proposals and the bus services themselves, but what you want to see in infrastructure, that kind of thing, infrastructure upgrades. And what we'd like to see is to have a full proposal in place by spring 2025 that we can then take to the local authorities and the bus operators and say, this is what passenger and stakeholder representatives in the Heart of Wessex want to see. Can we sit down and have some serious negotiations as to getting that put in place? So yeah, I think that covers what I wanted to do in terms of an overview. What I'll do now is if I can invite people to sort of raise a virtual hand in terms of any thoughts or questions they might have. And I'll go around one by one. Real one, if you can't find a virtual hand. Okay, I'll go with Barry's got his hand up first, so I'll go with Barry. Barry Charles.
Most of the discussions we've had about franchising within SVP have been pretty positive in all areas. The only reservation that's been expressed that I particularly remember was from a small operator who claimed it's expensive for the smaller fleet operators to get involved in the franchising process. And he cited Manchester, where he claimed small operators have pretty much been eliminated to the bigger businesses. I haven't checked the reliability of any of that, but does that ring true? Is that something that you recognise, Lee?
Yes, I've had discussions because certainly in terms of the early stages of putting the franchising proposal together, we actually had assistance from people that I know up there in the northern mayoral authorities, including Greater Manchester, and they actually helped with some of this. And we actually had a discussion on that particular subject, where it's absolutely true that despite their best efforts, it was really difficult for smaller operators to win contracts. And that's why what we've done, learning from that, in the 10-year franchising investment plan, we've set out 10 million in terms of managing the transition from the deregulated system to the new franchising system, and part of that will be support for smaller operators to be in a position to bid for contracts. Learning the lessons from Greater Manchester where that support wasn't really in place. Okay. And so there's things like, for example, a bigger group might be able to hire consultants to do the whole process for them, which wouldn't be available to smaller operators. And what we want to say is, they can apply for grants to, update their back office systems, all those and all the kind of research they might need to put a bid together. All of that expertise would be available to them and funded through that. And that's how we'd seek to manage that.
That's good. The concern was expressed, I think, involved really the bidding process, the cost of the bidding process. But I felt that rural areas, small operators are particularly important. So the 3 counties that we were talking about here, there probably are quite a few small operators active at the present time across those 3 rural counties. Yeah.
And we definitely want to try and keep them on board, particularly given that we want to see an expansion of demand responsive transport, where it will work well. But obviously the knock-on effect to that is that it might take out some of the services that smaller operators operate. So we want to make sure there's a proper balance, that we're not knocking smaller operators out of the system because of that. And so, that basically the best way we think that we can keep smaller operators in the game, is to give them the same kind of capacity that a bigger operator would have through the bidding system.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way we're looking at it, really.
Yeah, okay. So we'd need to communicate that at a fairly early stage to keep the smaller operators on board. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Barry. Mick Leary.
Yeah, I just wanted a number of questions. First of all, in terms of Bridgewater, which is the area that obviously you're quite concerned about, is that we've always been slightly, with the discussions we've had up to now, standalone, in other words, North, Yeovil and Taunton and those areas. And I take it that we would be part of the north of Somerset proposals. But the other thing is really looking at a sort of clear strategy forward from here, which I know a lot of work that you've done in outlining everything. But if we know that the local authority is not overjoyed about franchising and have almost said a no to it because there's no money and so forth, and a reluctance. And I know that we're pushing forward with the bus partnership proposals and everything else. But it is about the point that you were saying about, I wonder if there's going to be a shift in their thinking now because of the Heart of Wessex proposals. And therefore it's about getting ready for this sort of franchising within the Heart of Wessex, which will be an opportunity to improve one's service, but also greater funding coming from government within the mayoral system that would develop from that. And I'm just wondering if we need now in Somerset as well part of a sort of delegation to go to the local authority and say, okay, where are you now in the thinking behind the opportunity of franchising within the wider dimension, the wider area of the Heart of Wessex, and how can we help you with that? You've seen that they've probably seen the paper which outlines a lot of probably thinking they haven't been able to put together and so forth. So I think it's about making sure that we don't lose this opportunity or give the local authority the opportunity to say, oh, well, it'll all come up with the elections for the mayor and the king and the Heart of Wessex. So we'll wait for that to happen first. So you'll get a process of a delay when really we should be getting everything together within Somerset and the local authority really presenting a lead on this in order to make sure that all the work is done ready for franchising with the other partners who are coming in to the new Heart of Wessex program.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right on that. I think, but one of the biggest shifts we've seen, obviously, is the public backing that Richard Kluwer gave, the leader of Wiltshire Council. Up until that point, you had a similar situation in Wiltshire whenever anybody had discussed franchising, particularly with the council officers. It was a similar situation to the discussions that people have had in Somerset, where you get the impression they're not ultra keen, and the officers in Wiltshire aren't ultra keen. But I think what's changed now is that the politicians at the top have realised that this is a real game changer in terms of how local government is going to be organised, and that there are opportunities that arise from that. And I think also they've been told, certainly what I've been told, is that there will be a clear direction from the Department for Transport to guide these new devolved local authorities towards franchising. And they will, as you say, they will want to see these new devolved authorities make progress on how they're going to put a franchise system together, before mayors are elected. That kind of thing. They're going to want to see that. In terms of approaching Somerset Council, I've already contacted Somerset Council and said that we're putting the proposal together. But yeah, I mean, I think there's, in terms of putting a delegation together, I think the big question we need to collectively answer is, do we want to do that before the spring of 2025 and the entire proposal is ready? Or do we want to have discussions with the council before that? And I think that's a legitimate question that we need to decide between us. But I can certainly see the merit of that, Mick.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mick. Rosa Kell.
Thank you. I'm going to echo both Barry's comments regarding small operators and also Mick Leary's about a delegation in support of franchising meeting with Somerset. You've given us this wonderful figure of spring 2025, but that's less than 2 months away, which is a very short period of time. So
I think time is of the essence. I think we'd all agree on that.
Exactly, very much so. So I do think we ought to decide, if not tonight, certainly within the next 10 days or so, how we're going to group together and make a representation to Somerset Council, because obviously it is very important that we convince them that they have to take this seriously, because it's going that way, so they've got to take part in the process. What I am concerned about, though, is the fact that, just an example, I know you haven't worked on this, so I'm going to throw this at you, Lee, and Emery. For instance, the A39, currently all bus networks are basically along the A39, but there are many villages 2-3 miles off the A39 who want a bus service. They don't have one. An example is Stowe Gumber. They migrated to Bridgewater currently for their shopping and their medical services and things, but they are really nearer to Taunton or nearer to Minehead. But there is no connection, there's no decent road network to do that. So we ought to perhaps be thinking of the smaller bus operators to take on those kind of little one-off routes, offshoots of. But then what do we put on the A39 for those people to connect to the main network? And perhaps we have to think of something like that as we go through. The same, I'm sure Barry will be thinking of the area around Taunton, where this basically new village of 1,700 houses is going up, and there is nothing planned on their bus network. So how do they connect to Taunton themselves? And on the other side, on the north side here in Somerset, where we have villages like Kent and Mandeville, for instance, who are going to have a huge amount of development, but there's no plans to connect them to the main bus network, which basically is the overall Sheffield Mallet #1 bus, but there's no way of them getting there. So we ought to be encouraging small operators to think that these routes could be profitable to them, whether as a loss making and the franchises support it, or whether they themselves could become commercially services and fully funded. So when we're doing this and putting together what is going to be a final franchises, can we think of those items, please?
Yeah, we've already done a bit of thinking along those lines in terms of the rural accessibility zone concept. So the idea would be that you would have your main routes, obviously go through an area along the main corridors. You'd want to look at where DRT is the best solution, whether to put that in. And what I mean, I don't mean slinky, partial coverage. I mean proper DRT, 7 days a week, proper hours, the kind of thing that Paul Sanders has put in place in places like Lincolnshire, that kind of thing. And also the concept that GO-OP put forward of sort of community operated bus services, which could partner with smaller operators. And if we don't have them as part of the rural accessibility zone concept, gives us the opportunity to either have them as franchise bus services, or if they would work better alongside franchise bus services, we can exempt them and have them run by smaller operators in the way that you've suggested. So it's flexible. But what I do want to do, like I say, is to get passenger and stakeholder representatives together and ask them specifically, what is it you want? And then we can work out how best to provide that for them. But we can use all of those are potential options. But we just got to work out which is best for which particular situation, because we don't want anywhere to not have an option to get somewhere, like you say, the Stow-Gumbers, you see what I'm saying?
Fundamentals,
yeah, that kind of thing. What we don't want is bus deserts. We want everywhere to have some form of option. Whether it's a DRT service, whether it's a community service, whether it's a fully fledged franchise service, and we want them to have those options at the times that they would want to travel, not at the times that the council tell them, we'll only provide this for you a couple of times a week, so you'll have to fit your whole life around that. We want things to be more useful to people than that. A whole new change of mindset on that. So that's how we'd look at it.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rosa. Tim Trimble.
Thanks, Lee. I've been reading through some of the stuff you sent, and frankly, I'm suffering with a bit of an overload, really. But
I can imagine.
It seemed like
it's. I suppose it's that balance of providing enough detail for people to make sure that everyone knows that we've thought of everything.
Yeah. Okay.
And we're serious.
That's absolutely fine. I appreciate your thorough approach. What I was going to say, though,
sure.
If I'm talking to people around about the town and talking about buses and whatnot, and somebody says, well, what are the advantages of franchising as opposed to where we are now? I've just scribbled down 3 things that I think are important, but you tell me if there's others. One is it allows you to take a strategic approach to the whole sort of transport question, and it promotes a collaborative response to stuff, so that bus user groups and operators and local councils work together. And the third thing, looking at a commercial aspect, is that it allows you to use the profits from more profitable routes to cross-subsidize routes that are less profitable or completely non-profitable. Now, those are the 3 things that have sort of run through my mind in the last sort of 10 minutes or so. Is there anything else? If I was to say I need 6 bullet points if I'm selling this idea to people, are there another 3? Or would that be
what I would say is you've got the, I wouldn't necessarily say, you see, I suppose you often get, and people who read through blog pieces on franchising, for people who are opposed to it, and people proponents of the deregulated system, will often cite the fact that profitable services are cross-subsidizing non-profitable services as a bad thing, while some people will see it as a good thing. I tend not to look at it in that perspective. What I want is an overall network that works. So, it's basically putting different elements together to take a fresh look at it.
So you'd probably not say profitable routes subsidise less.
No, I wouldn't. I can understand why people do.
Yeah.
But the way I would look at it is it's an opportunity, because the downside of deregulation, in the way I'd look at it, is that your main routes are commercial and completely controlled by the private bus operators.
Exactly. So they take off the profit, and you're left with.
But also, it's very difficult to change them under the deregulated system. I mean, you ask people, if you ask people who have meetings with commercial bus operators regularly, and they'll if you ask them to say, can you make this bus go to X, or can you make this bus run at Y? Often you'll get the answer is, well, we can't do that because it'll affect our bottom line. Now, so that's why I'd rather not see them express them as profitable bus services, subsidizing non-profitable ones, because that almost suggests that the strongest bus services are keeping the weakest bus services alive. And I feel that that's not the way we should be expressing it. What we want is the best possible overall network that works for bus users right across the Heart of Wessex.
Okay, right, that's fine. Actually, I'd also just like to underline what you said about Wiltshire. I've had conversations with the Wiltshire bus people, and they were very, very down on franchising when I first spoke to them.
Is that the operators or the officers?
No, that's the head of passenger transport.
Oh yeah, well, I know the head of passenger transport.
Right, so
that doesn't surprise me.
And this has come up in Wiltshire, full council things as well.
Yeah.
And Richard Clure was always of the opinion that this couldn't work with, a population of less than 1.5 or 2 million people.
Exactly. But now you'll have one.
He apparently is, converted. So I was really, really surprised when he came out with that stuff, but I think it's very positive. So,
I think you've kind of answered your question there. He's converted because now he does have a population of 1.5 million to play with.
Okay, thanks.
But I guess I think you will see. I mean, obviously, if the politicians say to the officers, we're doing it, they'll have to do it. You might not necessarily change people. I mean, I know obviously there are officers in all three areas who've been doing this for decades, and you're not necessarily going to get them to change the views that they've held for decades overnight.
Yeah.
But I think the politicians are certainly. I think Richard Clue, as you say, is converted. And I think he's converted because he's seen the change from what a franchised Wiltshire network would look like versus what a franchised Heart of Wessex network would look like, if you see what I mean. And I think you're gonna get that more now. But that's also one of the reasons that I think having a dedicated franchising team of people with franchising experience, in charge of the areas and in charge of the system, wouldn't be a bad thing, because then you'd actually have the fresh approach from day one, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thanks Tim. Susan?
Well, thanks. First of all, I do need to go quite soon, so I might drop you.
No problem.
I wanted to ask about when you gave all the figures and you said it was over a 10-year period.
Yes.
Surely that's going to be front loaded, isn't it? It's not going to be 1/10.
No, but in terms of if you look at, because obviously you may not have got because I think Rosa invited you. Did she give you any of the
Not all the background. No, I didn't.
Okay, I meant to say I might be rather naive about some of the questions.
What I'll do, Susan, if you like, is I'll I'll send the document over, but I'll do it in the way you've just described it. I'll do it in that shows you, you know, where it would be spent, at what point it would be spent.
Okay.
And that might be the easier way. I think I could go through it all.
No.
But I think you might have to go before I finish.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody else is more aware of it than me. So, but basically, Somerset is struggling financially. If they do cut the bus funding that they're currently giving, and we don't get the basic money anyway, is that going to really impact on the
Yes.
franchising problem program?
Yes, it will. And my personal view, you might call me an optimist, you know, as John Lennon said, you may say I'm a dreamer or whatever, but you know, I don't think they'll do that, because I think it would be in terms of if they cut the supported bus budget and forfeit 6.4 million in basic funding, you know, that is a gross dereliction of their financial duty, surely. Now, I just cannot see them doing that. But I do think in the Heart of Wessex context, if we're doing it as a Heart of Wessex franchising proposal, you know, a Heart of Wessex bus strategy, a Heart of Wessex transport strategy, I think that ways will be found to make sure that decision doesn't have to be made.
Okay.
Whereas I think if Somerset had to do franchising on their own, I'd probably, in their current context, I don't think they could do it on their own because of the 114 question hanging over them.
And also that Somerset is the poor cousin of all the others, as far as funding's concerned anyway. All the others are much better funded by the counties, aren't they?
But I don't know if that's necessarily true. I mean, there's about 5.4 million per year in the supported bus budget at the moment, which you'll find is probably about average. It wasn't always the case. You know, there are other local authorities that spend less than Somerset.
Really?
Yeah. But yeah, they're certainly not at the top. I mean, that's for sure. But you know, but I think the key question, as we've said, is if they cut, is basic funding is dependent on local authorities keeping their supported bus budget at its current level. So let's be very clear: if Somerset cut it, they will lose that basic funding.
Yes.
And like I say, I hope that they don't do that. It will certainly have a big effect. We'll have to look at a lot of things in the franchising proposal if that happened. But Peter will tell you we had discussions about it. We do have a couple of contingency ideas if 114 happens, but we'd all rather it didn't. Let's face it, wouldn't we?
Absolutely.
You know, but we have had some thoughts about what the bridge would look like if we had to cross it. Put it that way. But at the moment, we're concentrating on you know what we've got at the moment. We're assuming that they're not going to cut the budget, that they're going to keep the BSIP money, because that would be the sensible thing to do. You know, you don't cut £1 million off a supported bus budget and lose 6, do you?
No.
That's financially illiterate, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and possibly, or as the way the Somerset is structured with the political parties, political suicide, maybe.
You'd have thought so. So let's hope that doesn't happen. But we have thought about what we might do if it did.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Peter Travis. Thank you, Susan. Thank you.
Just picking up on that reference to Somerset's bus funding, it is significantly lower than other rural authorities in the southwest. We've just got some updated figures. I'm not sure if we sent them through to you, Lee, but I will send them through to you.
Yeah.
You've talked about in Brittany your local groups and the role that they play. and you've obviously got a larger authority, which is the Transport Authority. In the event that we do get a combined authority and we do get a mayoral authority, and the mayoral authority becomes the local transport authority, what role will the three unitaries then have on transport with franchising?
Well, in terms of franchising, it'll be done by the devolved authority, but the the um the constituent unitary authorities would have a place on the franchising board, so they would have influence. So in terms, so it's not just a case of, because you always need some kind of political direction, basically. You can't avoid that. At the end of the day, politicians are elected by constituents. Constituents expect their politicians to stand up for them. So you, on any board that does this, you'll have politicians represented. But the idea would be that you would agree this strategy at the beginning and you would follow this strategy.
But if we had a mayor who wasn't necessarily reflective of the political attitudes of the current unitaries, given how volatile politics and voters are in the current situation, we could have a mayor pursuing a different policy from that of the three unitaries.
Well, we could. I mean, you could have. We could have a head of Brittany region that did that. Ultimately, I can only put forward a strategy that I think would work. I think it would, from discussions I've had with people of different political persuasions. This is the right balance that should appeal to politicians, whether they're Conservative, Labour, Liberal, Democrat. I can only put forward what I think would work. You might get someone, a complete independent, wants to do something completely different, and they might say, no, we don't fancy this. And sometimes, they might, then we wouldn't be able to do it. It's as simple as that.
But the decision maker will be the mayor.
Yes.
An elected mayor. So you will have an independence of the three council leaders who are likely to be the mayor themselves. So there's going to be a new politician coming in who's...
I suppose what I was trying to do is answer your question. What representation would the three unitaries have? And they would each have representation on the franchising board. Now, aside from that, as you say, a mayor, if it's an independent mayor, might decide they want to do things completely differently. They will struggle not to introduce franchising because they will be up against the central government that will be pushing all devolved authorities to introduce bus franchising.
But we are going to see a radical change in the power of the unitaries as far as transport is concerned.
Yes.
Which those of us in Somerset might not feel is such a bad thing, but
yeah, I mean, they won't be, in my opinion, looking at the way it's going and looking what's coming out of central government will direct devolved authorities to go for bus franchising. So a mayor will not be able to stop bus franchising happening. Now, a mayor could have some influence on how bus franchising is implemented, just the same as the three council leaders on the franchising board could have some influence on how bus franchising is implemented. But what I would recommend, and what I'm recommending in this franchising proposal, is that you agree this strategy and you follow this strategy. And I guess as someone who's putting forward a proposal, that's all you can do. They could turn around and say, no, Lee, I don't want to do it that way. And there might not be an awful lot I can do about that. But I can only set out my stall, if you see what I'm saying.
Sure. No, I fully recognise that, but it will be the mayor's officers who will execute the policy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it will. But bearing in mind that if you implement the franchising proposal in this way, the board will have representation from each of the unitaries on it.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's how I'd look at it. But yes, executive power, will rest with the mayor, as it will on all of the devolved matters.
Yeah. Thanks, Lee.
Okay. Thanks, Peter. Barry?
Yeah, in a similar sort of vein, continuing that conversation, Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Poole are a very different animal, being a sprawling urban area. I appreciate if they join Heart of Wessex, it increases the size and strength of the combined authority. But do you have any concerns about the combined authority then no longer being essentially a rural combined authority, because it will have to deal with urban area on its southeastern periphery, which is, as I say, a very different animal? And what if the independent mayor actually came from that urban area? How independent could he possibly be if that was the case?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, I've got to be honest. I only found out today that Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Poole have voted to join Heart of Wessex. I've only been able to incorporate so much strategically within the day I've had to, because I had a pitch all laid out last night that looked very different from the one that I've just given you, because Bournemouth and Christchurch and Poole are now in. Now there's a lot of things there's a lot of aspects that play with Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Poole. They have a bus network that we could all pretty much be envious of. They have high frequency bus services, they have night bus services, that kind of thing. But I guess the way I would look at it is that's one of the reasons that I wanted operating areas that reflected the counties, and operating areas within those counties that reflect the areas within those counties. So we can put the right kind of bus network in place, in Greater Taunton, just as we can put the right network in place in Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Poole. So in terms of that, I'm not that concerned. I think the strategy can cope with Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Poole coming in. But as I said to Peter, politics can throw up an awful lot of unknowns. Especially when you've got a mayor that's got executive power. So, there are some things you can't plan for. But as much as I possibly can plan for, and as much as those like yourself, Emery, and that who are working with me on it can plan for, we will plan for. But as I said to Peter, there are some things that will come at you as a surprise, and you'll just have to deal with them as they come.
Yeah, sure. Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Poole is quite a complex area.
Yeah, it is.
To me, it was surprising the domination operator failed not too long ago, and Moore became the dominant bus company.
It was the problem. There were a lot of that had been building up for a long time.
Yeah.
And also, I think their previous, RATP, who were a partner in it, they wanted out. And obviously, when they lost the investment from RATP, that put them in a difficult position. And there are a lot of things that come together. Some, you can look at, companies that have done historically well, and then suddenly you turn around and find they're gone. And it can be any number of reasons. And I think the loss of the RATP investment didn't help. And I think, they just didn't, thanks, Mick. Thank you, Mick. So I was saying Mick said goodbye there. But yeah. The honest answer is I've had a day to react to the fact that Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Poole are in. I need to do more research. I need to talk to people there. and I'll have more of an idea of what we're going to do once I've done that. Is my
Yeah,
own
sure.
thought.
Okay. And two quick other follow-ups, maybe, just stuff we've previously been talking about, if I may. Somerset Council I think the exercise finished yesterday, but they were consulting with people in the council area on where to make cuts to save the multi-million pounds that they need to save. And one of the areas they were consulting on was transport, public transport. We met with them at a bus user and stakeholder meeting recently.
Can I just interrupt you just very quickly? I'm just aware, I can see in the background that Jane's waving frantically at me. I just wonder whether it's an urgent wave, and perhaps I should bring her in at this point. I will come back to what you're saying though, Barry.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lee. I have to go.
Yeah.
But I wanted to pass on and support your query about whether you thought you should be talking to the authority sooner rather than later. I would say, in my personal experience, sooner, particularly as you've got a plan in your back pocket.
Okay.
What we have had, you don't need to know any details, but we have had a plan within Westbury for something completely different. And it's taken me 4 years. But the fact that I had a plan in my back pocket when I started 4 years ago meant that they sat up and took notice. And I would say to you, there is no point in doing even more work to discover that when you offer it, they go, nah, whatever, walk away. So my vote would be talk to everybody as soon as you possibly can. Yeah. I shall be talking to all my councillors about this, and thank you and good night, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Jane. And I think there is a consensus now towards going as quickly as possible on this. So
absolutely
agree very much, Jane.
Yeah. Don't overpromise on time, though.
No.
Don't say, "Oh, we'll do it by the end of February."
No, I deliberately didn't.
Do it as soon as we possibly can. Yeah.
I mean, spring is realistic, but end of February wouldn't be. I agree.
No. Bye.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you very much.
Hi, Jane. Nice to meet you.
And you too, Rosa.
Okay, I'll just quickly go back to Barry. Do you want to finish your point?
Yeah, so we raised the issue of the BSIP funding and the potential loss of it if they were to cut bus support in general. And they virtually said, no, obviously we wouldn't consider that. But whether that first put the idea in their heads or not, I don't know. But it was pretty clear that they weren't going to do that, whatever the consultation said.
And my hope was that they wouldn't be.
Yeah,
that's consider doing that. So that's encouraging.
And the other thing I wanted to just comment on quickly was the franchising budget that you've put together there, and upfront costs. The biggest element of all those expenses is new vehicles, which clearly would come a little bit further down the line. So my observation from looking at it myself as a layman is that there are upfront costs for sure, substantial upfront costs. But when you look at the bigger picture over the 10 years, they don't look to me like they're substantially larger upfront in the setups. To my mind, the bigger costs come further down the line once you progress through the projects. That's my impression I got from the figures anyway.
And and obviously, with things like the electric bus partnership, we're trying to assemble, as much technical expertise as we possibly can, as much experience from people who've been there, done that. Greater Manchester, we've had, we will soon be, basically we're trying to assemble as much technical expertise, and that's one of the reasons we set up the electric bus partnership, is to do that. And we have to, and also, you'll notice on there as well the hydrogen pilot as well, because we don't want to, if that's going to be part of the mix, we don't want to, dismiss that either. But clearly, zero emission buses, we've got to be, if it's a 10-year plan, then we've got to be right there with that.
Yeah. Thanks, Lee.
Okay, thanks, Barry. I think Tim Trimble had his hand up very briefly there. He's put it back down, but I don't know if you had something to add.
That was a thumbs up to engaging early with the local councils.
Well, I think, like I say, I want to get the proposal done as quickly as possible. So you will all see those that haven't been engaged in terms of what they want to see from their bus services will very soon get an email from me or one of the people that I'm working with to discuss that. But yes, it seems to me from what everybody said here that the consensus is we move as quickly as we possibly can on this, and I'm more than happy to go with that. So yeah, we'll do our plans, with that in mind, as quickly as we can. In terms of, sorry, does anybody else have any further points they want to put in at this stage?
No further points, but just yeah, it just seems like there's lots of very exciting opportunities, and yeah, I just it'll just be interesting to see what happens over the next few years, and yeah, it's and
I think certainly from your own area, Greater Taunton is one we want to come on to pretty quickly. So I mean, if we can get in touch and have a discussion with you on that, very shortly, that would be good.
Sure.
But yes, so yeah, it was obviously we had a meeting with some of the others that couldn't attend yesterday, and the consensus seemed to be that if we were going to have regular meetings, that they should be monthly. Does everybody feel that would be a reasonable time frame?
Yep.
In between email updates, yes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we'll be in very, very regular contact via email and other means, especially moving it forward as quickly as possible. But in terms of meetings like this, we were thinking monthly.
Yeah. Yep, sounds good.
Okay. So yes, if I can, so yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, there's been in the past when we've had sort of documents circulated, it's been sort of within the team. But anything that I've put forward on this proposal, Heart of Wessex, and anything I will put forward from this point in, you can consider that I'm happy to have it out in the public domain. So if you need to refer to it to explain to people what the concept is, then you have my blessing to do that. And I think that's where we are now. But yes, we'll certainly look at ways of moving things forward as quickly as possible. And I think in terms of meeting with the powers that be, we'll look to begin dialogue with them as quickly as possible as well. So I think if everybody's happy, everybody happy to leave it there for the moment?
No.
Yeah, no, it's it's a very useful meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for attending. And what I'll do in terms of the next meeting, I'll have a chat with Peter and a couple of others, and we'll get a date out to you for that and the details of that. But obviously there will be, because we're going to move quite fast on this, expect some emails to come across, in the very near future on various aspects of it. And your help with all of it is very much appreciated.
Thank you, Lee.
For organising, Lee.
Thanks all. Cheers.
Okay.
Pleasure to meet some Wiltshire colleagues. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Looking forward to meeting you in face to face sometime in Trowbridge or Bradford or whatever.
Sorry, I missed.
I said I look forward to meeting you somewhere face to face soon in Trowbridge or even Melksham. Take care.